Good evening and welcome to the Village Board meeting for the Village of Pleasantville. Today is Monday, December 2. If you are watching live on Monday, December 2, we encourage you to call in if you have comments or questions. Our call-in number is 769-1677. As always, you can watch us live and also on on-demand webcasts after the fact on either Cablevision or Verizon Cable TV, and you can do the same on webcasting at pctv76.org. Our next regular meeting is Monday, December 16, 2 weeks from today at 8 p.m. with a work session at 7. The primary focus of tonight will be a presentation from the Benchmark folks about some new submissions they have made, from Toll Brothers about some additional material they have to present. True? Yes? No?
Yes to Benchmark.
No Toll tonight?
No, well, Toll is certainly here, and
Yeah.
there will be a joint meeting.
Okay, but nothing further to present tonight. Okay, so a Benchmark will be making a presentation of some of their revised materials, and that will be a good opportunity for both everyone in the audience and particularly our Planning Commission to be brought up to speed on the latest in submissions. After the regular meeting, we'll move back into work session and we'll have a joint meeting with the Pleasantville Planning Commission members regarding both projects, Benchmark Senior Living on Bedford Road near Maple Hill and Toll Brothers at the Baker Property site on Washington Avenue. So with all of that in mind, we only have a few resolutions and thought we would do them up front so that we get that out of the way and then move on to the primary part of the meeting. I had a couple of announcements to make. One was to congratulate Pleasantville resident Betty Jane Whalen, who was inducted into the Westchester County Senior Hall of Fame and will be so honored on Thursday, December 5. The other special occasion on December 2 is that we have a longstanding village resident, Fred Hettinger, who is a retired civil engineer. I say retired because he doesn't look very retired to us. He has been an extraordinary village resident in multiple ways, very, very often assisting us on an entirely unpaid basis with review of planning proposals and review of ideas for development, a different take frequently on things that applicants provide, and on more than a number of occasions, an entirely new idea that Fred has just appeared and dropped off on Patty's desk to let us have something to consider. The results of that have benefited the community in lots of different ways, and in fact, there are a couple of things on the back burner right now that are entirely Freddie's idea that we think may come to fruition in the way of modest improvements and some improved parking. Fred has been doing this tirelessly, and we are more than happy on today, December 2, to honor him on the occasion of his 90th birthday. Fred, if you are out there watching, and we hope you are, I have a proclamation here that we will pass in your direction that reads, the Board of Trustees honors Fred Hettinger on the occasion of his 90th birthday for his invaluable service to the village as a member of the Public Safety Advisory Committee since 1986, and for his civic interest and participation in planning, engineering, and development on multiple projects throughout this village, issued this 2nd day of December 2013 with respect and appreciation. In recognition thereof, be it resolved that December 2, 2013 be known as Fred Hettinger Day throughout the village of Pleasantville. So there you have it. Freddie, we hope you're watching. An indication really extraordinary service to the village of Pleasantville. Just a couple of other things I wanted to mention. One, I know we've said it a few times, but it bears repeating. Everybody who has a star exemption on their property taxes is required to refile for that this year. New York State has sent everybody a postcard that has a login number on it. If you haven't got it, you need to contact the state. If you don't accomplish that by December 31, you will not receive the benefit of the star discount on your school taxes. So I strongly encourage everybody to make that happen. Anybody else have something they want to mention?
Mayor, can I just add that that does not apply to seniors. They do not have to reapply.
Okay.
So they don't get nervous and call tomorrow.
And if you haven't got the postcard, the information is up on our website, is it not, Patty? It was at one point.
It was probably somewhere in
Pleasantville-ny.gov can direct you to the right place. It's not a village issue, it's a state issue. So with that in mind, we have a few resolutions to go through, and we'll go through them now, get those out of the way. The first is number 244, Colleen.
Resolved that pre-check register dated November 18th, 2013, covering electronic fund transfer checks 1188 through 1235 and regular pre-check numbers 76846 through 76910 has been reviewed, and they are hereby approved as listed below. Coming from the general fund, the water fund, the capital fund, the refuse fund, the trust and agency fund, totaling $234,297.34.
Is there a second?
Second.
Comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion approved. 245.
Resolved that the Board of Trustees has reviewed the minutes of the meeting held on Monday, November 18th, 2013, and they are hereby approved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Comments or corrections on the minutes?
You're good?
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion approved. Jonathan, 246.
Resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby approves the following budget amendment. We are going to be increasing the revenue and expense for the settlement of litigation with T-Mobile by $25,000 from compensation for loss to legal.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion approved. Brian, 247.
Resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby authorizes the village administrator to sign an agreement with Mercy College to provide an occupational internship program at the Clinton Street Center for Mercy College students.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion approved. 248, Colleen.
Resolved that the Board of Trustee hereby authorizes the village administrator to sign a right-of-way license agreement with Lori Alessio, 79 Highview Terrace, subject to the submittal of architectural plans.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion approved.
The title of that is wrong, Jude. Did you
I
say?
corrected it on
Okay.
one end, but I will.
Okay.
I actually had Highway
Right,
Terrace.
that's right.
So,
Oh, yeah.
Thank
See,
you.
part of our motivation in doing this up front is to let you know how exciting our lives really are. But the last one is exciting. Mindy, 249.
Right, and the title on this is incorrect also. It's accepting a donation for the blocks at the pool pavilion, not for the pool pavilion, just so that designation is correct in our, for Mary. Resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby accepts a donation from James and Cindy Kennedy in the amount of $5,000 towards the Pleasantville pool block at the pavilion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Let me invite Ben Roy here to the podium to comment about this generous gift.
And I just want to make a note that Ben is on the Pleasantville Swim Team Board, and also want to recognize Petra Zorgman, who's the chair of the Pleasantville Swim Team Board, that's here.
Thank you for the opportunity to talk about this. As was mentioned, my name is Benjamin Roy. I'm currently one of the two presidents of the swim team board, along with Petro, and I would like to take a moment to comment on this resolution. This is really a generous donation given by Jim Kennedy with his family, Cindy, Liz, and Meredith. As many of you may know, Jim Kennedy ran the Pleasantville swim team from 1997 for over a decade. And he turned this team, which was really kind of a middle-of-the-road recreational swim league team, into a powerhouse in the Northern Westchester Swim Conference. We went from the lower divisions under Jim to really undefeated champions of the first division, which is really an amazing accomplishment, especially when you kind of consider what we were up against. Pleasantville swim team is limited to members of Pleasantville, so you have to be a member of the pool, so it's a pretty small pool that you're running from, no pun intended. And we are competing against other big private pools in Chappaqua and other surrounding towns that recruit players and swimmers from all around the county, competitive year-round swimmers. So it's a real mismatch. I like to compare it to the kind of Miracle on Ice, maybe not quite so, but it was really a big deal what he was able to do. However amazing as this accomplishment was, I know this wasn't Jim's, he doesn't consider it his greatest accomplishment. He ran the swim team for 11 years and exposed hundreds and hundreds of children to swimming, to the sport of swimming, teaching them everything from how to swim to the finer points of how to get off the swim blocks and swim turns and stroke techniques. Many went on to become serious year-round swimmers, many collegiate swimmers, even some swimmers that went to Olympic trials, which is an amazing accomplishment. It's the fastest swim meet on the planet. But more than that, everybody that joined that swim team developed an ability to learn how to swim, a really important skill. They developed a love for swimming, which is a sport that you can participate in your entire life to help keep you fit and happy. And they can pass it on to their children as well. And through swimming, these children learn what it can mean to be part of a team and how through dedication and hard work, you can really accomplish your goals. Even after stepping down from the team in 2008, he maintained a real commitment to the team. His children had graduated, but he really understood that it was very difficult to run this 120-member team, even if it's just for a couple of months. So he founded this board along with Mindy to help continue that and help keep the swim team going. And the swim team's maintained a sort of Division I, Division II accomplishment even over the last few years without him running the team. I would also like to say I've mentioned a little bit his family, but he was not a one-man show. As he was running the team, his wife, Cindy, was really integrally involved in running the team. His 2 daughters swam on the team, swam in college, and even came back to run the team when they were in college as well. And as mentioned last month, Jim Kennedy and his family made a tremendous gift, donating $5,000 to help replace the starting blocks, which were over a quarter century old at the pool. They were there when I was coaching this team back in the late 80s and really have been in desperate need of replacement for some time, but due to expense and budget constraints, it just has not been possible. They're not a cheap item. But with this donation, this will allow the village to finally purchase new swim team blocks, which is going to be a great boost to the swim team as well as to the facility overall, and hopefully give a whole new generation of swimmers the ability to get off, in Jim's words, to a great new start here in Pleasantville. So on behalf of the Pleasantville Swim Team Board, our swimmers and the families of the Pleasantville Swim Team, I would like to offer the Kennedys our heartfelt thanks for their amazing generosity and continued contributions to the Pleasantville Swim Team. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I just want to add, too, that, on the team, there are children from the age of 4 and 5 years old to as old as 18. And when you see the 18-year-old swimmers looking after a 5-year-old swimmer and standing at the end of that lane and cheering on a little 5-year-old that's trying to make it 25 yards across the pool, it's really an amazing thing. And these kids are in awe of one another. We've had some kids on the team with special needs that, haven't really had the confidence at school. And when they come onto our swim team, they're all of a sudden, they have so much confidence and they're able to really excel. A lot of parents have said to me over the years that their total school experience has changed because of swimming. So to watch that, I don't think there's any other sport where you could watch those age groups just be together as a team. And Jim Kennedy, as Ben had said, was such an intricate part of that and building that for all of our children. So and so many kids have come back who have swam for the team and coached that team, and it's just been it's a great experience for everybody that's part of it. So we thank Jim so much for helping the program out like that continually. So.
Likewise, Jim and Cindy, Liz, and Mary, they've left an extraordinary legacy just by what they've already done, and to add to that, the new blocks is very much appreciated, as you might imagine. I dare say we will have a unanimous vote to accept $5,000 contribution from them. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion approved. That ends our resolutions. Got that business out of the way, and now I invite the folks from Benchmark to present the material they have tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the board. My name is David Cooper from the law firm Rosarin & Steinmetz. Tonight, here representing Benchmark Senior Living in its petition to amend the zoning code and rezone a parcel to the Elder Care District, which is undertaken in its proposal to develop an 87-unit assisted living facility behind the church property at 70 Bedford Road. One thing I should say is David Steinmetz, who was going to be here tonight, could not make it tonight last minute. I don't want to say illness, but hurt his back and cannot make it here tonight, so he sends his apologies and certainly won't be here at the next meeting. With me tonight is Bill Cook from Benchmark Senior Living, who you know, as well as our team from John Meyer Consulting, Anthony Guccione, Rich Pearson, and Diego also, who's our technical expert. Here tonight should we get into the visual presentation, probably more for the second part of the meeting. Also with me tonight is John Burns from Hudson Property Advisor, sitting over there, who will get sort of first up tonight for you on the appraisal and fiscal analysis. We're here tonight for essentially a two-part meeting. Part one is what I'm up here for right now for, what we characterize as closing out the outstanding secret questions that were asked of us over the last month or so. We submitted a substantial submittal to you dated November 25th, responding to the comments of BFJ as well as Hudson Engineering, your boards, and the village's planning and engineering consultants. as well as responding to certain questions of your board and the public concerning the fiscal analysis and economic impact, et cetera. Part 2 would be, I guess, the sort of the joint meeting between your board and the Village Planning Commission.
What I would encourage you to do is to make the presentation, you're going to run the video and the like, again, as part of the televised session.
Okay.
I think that's useful background, obviously, for the Planning Commission, but I think useful background for the public to be reminded of any of that, especially if it has changed, so that when we go into work session, all that will be common knowledge.
Sure.
Does that work for you?
And what I was going to do is end my presentation with an offer to show it, but you know
All right.
what? It's been
Okay, great.
accepted. So let me move on to the response first. The first part relating to the fiscal analysis. Really, there are two issues that we want to address tonight. The first would be the response to the comments from the public relating to our fiscal analysis and our establishment or estimation of the fiscal benefit of the project for the village. The second would be the response or the response to the question that was asked of us relating to the potential impact on adjacent property values. John Burns is here with us tonight, and I think what I'd like to do is really answer the second question first and bring John up first to bring you through his presentation, and then go into the rest. Additionally, if there are any questions relating to the submission that we submitted on Monday, I know BFJ and Hudson Engineering are still going into it, and we expect soon to have a comment letter. But to the extent that your board has already reviewed it or has some questions about it, we're here tonight to answer it. Certainly what we would submit is that at this point your board has the empirical data, expert opinion before it to make a determination of significance, and we would hope that we'd be moving in that direction, hopefully by the end of December. But to the extent that we're still waiting for comment letters, we know that should be coming shortly, and we're here tonight. The first question for us tonight is assessing the potential impact of locating a facility in this neighborhood, or really the question is, well, will this facility be located next to adjacent single-family residences? Is that going to cause an impact to the surrounding property values? One, I would say, and certainly we're going to call John up in a second, that's a tough question to answer in the first instance, because what you need to do is isolate the impact of the facility from all of the other general factors that go into market value that are typical, house sizes, varying communities, et cetera. What I believe John has done, and certainly he can take you through the methodology of trying to answer that question and isolate as many factors out as possible, is find a good analysis or good existing facility next to a residential property. This was the Rybrook, Atria Rybrook assisted living facility in Rybrook, to be able to assess, well, does the proximity to the facility drive any of the factors? And I think that the conclusion that he's reached is that to the extent that there would be any impact, it would be nominal at best. Let me ask John to come on up. And for those of you who don't know John Burns is the principal at Hudson Property out of Mount Kisco, New York. He's been an appraiser, certified licensed MIA appraiser, working in the area for the last 30 years. Specializes certainly in Westchester County. In fact, about a year ago, maybe even a little less, John was before your zoning board, just sort of deemed an expert doing an appraisal in Pleasantville. Certainly is done work in the area, and certainly in Pleasantville. But let me bring John up to kind of take you through the.
All right, and for the benefit of those watching, included among the things you submitted this week is a 60-some-odd page report from Hudson Property Advisors dated November 25, entitled Value Impact Analysis. Is that PDF up on the website, Patty?
Yes.
Okay, so anyone who wanted to dig into that report is on the website at pleasantville-ny.gov.
Okay, thank
Welcome,
you.
sir.
Mr. Mayor, members of the board, thank you for listening to me this evening. I'm going to give you a brief rundown of the assignment that I had, the methodology that we used, and the conclusions that we reached and how we reached them. About a month and a half, 2 months ago, we were contacted by Benchmark to prepare an analysis to determine whether there would be an impact, and if so, what would be the impact on the nearby residential property values. Can you hear me, by the way?
Yes.
Okay. That would be attributable to the locating this project on that site. So the analysis really consisted of 3 phases, if you will. The first phase is basically a review and analysis of the proposed project, including review of the site plan, renderings, visiting the property, visiting the neighborhood, taking a look at all the issues involving how property values could potentially be impacted. The 2 potential locations that were identified were the homes on Maple Hill and potentially the condominiums over at Foxwood. Those are the closest residential neighborhoods that were looked at. The second phase of the analysis really involved identifying a study area where there's enough data to do a study. What we did is we looked at about 25 different senior facilities in Westchester County, and for each one of them we looked at the neighborhood that they were located in. And we found that although several of them were located in or adjacent to neighborhoods that had detached single-family houses, they were in neighborhoods that only had a few of them, maybe a dozen or less, or maybe 15. That's just not enough houses to find enough sales to do any sort of a meaningful study. So in a perfect world, what we needed to find was a neighborhood large enough that had homes that were close to a senior facility, and in that same neighborhood where there's homes that are farther from the facility, and homes that are identical or similar enough to each other so you can isolate out all the other variables so that the only real variable, the only difference would be the proximity to the senior housing. So after looking at about 25 different properties throughout Westchester, the Atria popped up as certainly the most reliable one. It's a development of about 290 houses or so. They were all built at the same time, relatively the same time, same developer, generally the same quality of construction, same condition, same everything. So a lot of the variables are isolated out. We were very fortunate because it's actually the town of Rye has a very thorough, high level of detail in their assessment office, where they, let me back up for a second. In Rye, the development that we chose, like I said, was the Atria. Next to the Atria is the Belfair residential development with about 290 houses. In Belfair, many of those houses have lower levels, finished basements, partly finished basements, above grade. Thankfully, the local assessor in Rye has all the square footages of what's finished, what's unfinished, what's above grade, what's below grade. So we were able to perform a very detailed analysis on price per square foot of above grade versus below grade, that sort of thing, and we were able to do a real apples-to-apples type analysis. So after pulling almost every single sale, no, let me back up one more second. In Belfair, there's several houses that are directly adjacent to the Atria, and then there's a lot of houses that are not adjacent to it, that are up to maybe a mile or half a mile away. We broke them down into 2 groups. The houses that are actually where their property borders the Atria, and the houses are 60 to 80 feet, maybe 100 feet away. Then there's houses that are across the street from the Atria, maybe another 20 or 30 feet away, and then basically all the other houses that are much farther away. So we did an analysis on a price per square foot of the close houses, if you will, versus the far houses. And we were able to find sales going back about 12, 13 years from when the project was new, and found sales of both types of houses, close and far away. And we took, for each time there was a sale, we found sales of similar houses that took place within about a year or so, and we're able to do comparisons. And what we found is usually we'd use at least 3 sales, sometimes 4 or 5, what I'll call away sales, distant sales, compared to a sale that took place that bordered the Atria. after doing all the math, all the analysis, all the statistics and everything, what we ended up showing was that there's a nominal impact on value. It's somewhere, what we showed was somewhere between maybe 1 and up to maybe 4%, maybe. That, from an appraisal perspective, is almost a meaningless number. It's insignificant. No appraisal is accurate within that sort of a finite percentage. So in addition to the quantitative analysis, what we did also is we spoke with brokers and also the original developer for Mitch, his name is Mitch Hochberg, of the Belfair project. And we did an interview for about 4 different brokers and Mr. Hochberg, or maybe 3 different brokers and Mr. Hochberg. And those brokers are the brokers that sold homes directly bordering the atria, and as well as selling houses that are outside the area. And all except one said no impact whatsoever. The one broker that felt there might have been an impact, his quote, it's in my report, said something to the effect that there might be an impact, but it's difficult to measure. That was about the most impact that we were able to find. So at the end of the day, after we looked at all the analysis and the data, our conclusion was that the value impact is insignificant. I'm ready for questions.
And how transferable is the experience, do you think, in Rye to any other project?
Well, let me back up and say one thing. In Rye, I think, if anything, there would be more of an impact than there would be at the Pleasantville site. There's fewer trees. There's a road that actually connects the two. It's like a service road, and they keep it closed, but it does connect the two. So it's more integrated with that neighborhood. You see it right there. It's right in front of you. There's really, so if anything, I think Rye would have a larger impact than Pleasantville.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, no, the report was great.
Thank you.
Thank you, and obviously you have the report and certainly can go through it. But, in addition to that report, when we were going over the economic and fiscal benefits back in October, there was a presentation. Mr. Tom made a presentation questioning our UMass report, which estimated there'd be a fiscal benefit of about $415,000 in annual tax revenue from this project. Mr. Tom estimated that this revenue would be about $250,000, and so that they're saying that we were coming in too high in our analysis. That analysis, and we sat through the presentation. That analysis was based upon taxes paid in facilities located in Texas, Michigan, various other states, and I think one in New York State up in Columbia County. What we would submit to you is that analysis doesn't represent a typical tax structure of Westchester County and wouldn't yield a valid conclusion as to indicating that the UMass estimate was off base. But to illustrate that, what we did was, and we supplied this to your board, we obtained tax revenue estimates, or not estimates, but actual tax revenue paid by facilities in the surrounding area. For instance, Atria and Briarcliff Manor, which has 90 assisted living units or beds and 15 memory care beds, pays, according to the 2012 tax records, $575,000 in taxes annually. As well as Atria on the Hudson, which is located in Ossining, which has 100 assisted living beds and 22 memory care beds, pays annually $757,000, actually upwards of that. What I would submit to you is that would indicate that actually the UMass's study of the estimate is actually a bit low, but certainly that the surrounding municipalities and taking those types of taxes paid by facilities in surrounding municipalities would indicate that certainly at least a $415,000 estimate is accurate. One of the other questions that I know your board had asked about was Benchmark's estimate of annual revenue, which was in the UMass report as well. They estimated it $9.7 million or thereabouts. Bill, if you ask Bill to come up and just take you through how we got to that, or how Benchmark got to that number. The only thing is I would say, and obviously say for the record, but Bill specifically, obviously don't reveal any proprietary information with this public presentation, but to the extent that we can take you through those numbers, I'm sure Bill.
Thank you. Bill Cook from Benchmark Senior Living. A pleasure to be back. I would gladly run through some numbers here. I do have a couple of points up front. Just to reiterate what Mr. Cooper just said, was to keep in mind that these are not our exact numbers from proprietary information, but overall the percentages are correct, and they are done to exacting detail in our pro formas. The numbers themselves, when we generate our pro formas for our underwriting for these projects, is taken from information from historical data that we've garnered from our other 49 properties, and then also extrapolated against the local demographics of the area. So we put a lot of time and effort into it. And I think it's also important to remember that these are numbers that when we put together, when the time comes for these projects to be financed, that we then have to share these numbers with other people who will then delve into them. So these are numbers that we have to be absolutely comfortable with, be able to back up and be able to define for anyone on an accounting basis who wishes to see how we do that. And then the last thing I'd just kind of like to point out too is, as you hear these numbers, although they may sound large, and I'm sure people think about it in terms of how much it would actually cost to live here, is what these numbers what you would not be paying for to move into our building. And when I say when you're living at home, you're paying any house costs, so that could be a mortgage or insurance, taxes, repairs, upkeep, landscaping, utilities, oil, gas, water, sewer, garbage, all of those things. So that's all included here. So it's not you are getting everything when you move into our building that someone, if you're living in the area one way or another, you're paying now. And then additionally, what also comes to that is your food. So all of your food is included. And I don't know if anyone's been to the grocery store recently, but a $4 gallon of milk is fairly expensive. And then there are the things that you necessarily also, you would get a level of care with this. And the other things that you're not necessarily going to see a number for, which are companionship and safety and peace of mind. So that's my little preamble, and now I'll just kind of get to the numbers generally. According to the report, we indicated our revenue would be approximately $9.7 million. And again, it's best to note that this is our stabilized income, so this would be 3 years down the road at approximately 93-92% occupancy. So,
And is that typical occupancy for your 49 properties?
yes, that's what we would typically call a stabilized occupancy. Obviously, we don't expect to be at 93% the day after we open the door, although that would be good. So based on that $9.7 million number, approximately 87% of it would come from I'll call it our rent, or our base fees for coming into the community. So that's approximately $8.5 million. So at 97 residents, that breaks down to about $87,000 a year per resident, or down to about $7,300 a month. The next 11% is what we call is about $1 million, and that's generated from what we call ancillary expenses. That would break down to approximately $900 per month per resident. And they would include things such as beauty salon services, tray services, essentially room service if you can't make it down or something like that. Guest meals if you want to have any guests come in or something like that. Rides, obviously we provide transportation out on scheduled basis, but if you would prefer not to travel with anyone, have a private car, that's available, obviously. So we could, that would be part of that. And any other non-scheduled activities that might be into that. And then the last 2% would be made up of what we call community fees, which is essentially call it an entrance fee or a deposit, so to speak. And that's relatively breaks down to about $2,000 a resident. So that's the overall generator of where that number came from. So again, it seems like a large number, but when you break it down on a number of residents, it falls out to be, and I think my first time here, I think I originally had said that average month rent would be someplace in the $6,000 to $8,000 range, and it falls a little closer to $8,000, but that's right in that range of where we started from. So.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any questions? Okay, thank you.
Finally, what we also have tonight is we submitted, JMC submitted a significant amount of material, including a pretty rather thick packet of responses to the initial comments that we received from BFJ and Hudson Engineering. We also updated our traffic analysis, and Rich Pearson is here to answer any questions. I certainly don't want to put you at a spot where a consultant hasn't given you a memo yet about comments on what we've submitted, or start going into submittals that you haven't reviewed yet. But to the extent that your board wants to review anything that we've just submitted in terms of traffic, stormwater, we're certainly happy to answer any questions. Or we can go right into what we would ask to do is do the visual presentation and kind of really take the Planning Commission through the changes to the site since the last time we were before them, which I believe was in March of 2013 of this year. Certainly, I think when we were before the Planning Commission back then, there was a 4-story proposal. We're now down to a 3-story proposal, and there have been other changes on the zoning and et cetera, which we'd be happy to take the commission through. But before I get there, do you have any questions on?
Susan, did you have anything you wanted to bring up in that?
Yeah, I just wanted to give a status of, as you know, all of these materials came in last week, and we are reviewing the traffic and the fiscal analysis as well on BFJ's end, and then Hudson Engineering has started their review of the stormwater and the other engineering aspects. They did have a meeting last week, I believe, with John Meyer Consulting, and indicated that many of their comments have been addressed at this point. They do have a couple concerns which they're working through those with John Meyer Consulting. So we would anticipate in the next couple weeks certainly having full reviews of all of those aspects.
And David, one of the submissions was the truck turning analysis and site distance plan.
Yes.
Dated November 25, which was at least in part in response to community comment about that. Is that something you're going to show, or can that just be described how that analysis worked?
Rich, you want to go through the analysis?
Again, all of these materials that were submitted on November 25 are up on our website at pleasantville-ny.gov.
Okay.
Yeah. You know what? We have copies of it, so if you could aim it back in the direction of the camera and the audience.
Good evening, Rich Pearson, John Meyer Consulting. As you mentioned, we submitted information on truck turning as well as fire truck access from Chappaqua that was requested, and also the sight lines associated with the proposed intersection. The first drawing, drawing TA-1, shows an SU-30 delivery truck turning analysis. It's a computer simulation. It's based on the actual turning ability of the trucks, and what this shows is that the vehicle entering the site driveway, making a right turn and coming through the site, as well as vehicle exiting the driveway, can work within the site and not cross over the double yellow line that we would be proposing within the site to separate entering and exiting traffic. So that functions well. The second drawing is Chappaqua fire truck turning analysis. It's drawing TA-2. We did coordinate with the Chappaqua fire chief, and he gave us the size of his fire truck that he would bring to the site if needed. We have accommodated their truck. This is a vehicle entering from Chappaqua, making a left turn into the site, and then that's the fire truck exiting and making a right turn out. The fire truck does have a bit of an encroachment on the exiting movement across the double yellow line, but that's common for fire trucks accessing property such as this. The third drawing is drawing SD-1, site distance plan. It shows the proposed sight lines based on the actual travel speeds. We had radar gun and we took 100 vehicles in each direction approaching the site driveway. We determined the 85th percentile speed. That's the speed that 85% of the vehicles are traveling at or below, and it's known as the design speed for traffic engineering and this type of analysis. There's publications that are recommending certain site distances, and that publication, it's known as AASHTO, American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials, published the book, and that's what the New York State Department of Transportation utilizes. We showed the site lines associated with the travel speeds, and actually the site distance looking towards the Old Village is substantially larger than what's required. We also showed that the site distance looking to Chappaqua also satisfies the requirements or recommendations of AASHTO.
So that would, so I realize that New York State DOT does not give you an ironclad commitment about their willingness to accept this curb cut, but all the signals and your discussions with them so far indicate that it would not be a problem to gain that.
That's correct. Yeah, I've met with DOT in the field. I've talked to them on the phone. We've submitted this information to them as well, and they're in the process of reviewing it, but I fully expect that they would approve our proposed access.
Okay, any questions?
Well, and the only question, I guess the only question I had is that any action that we may or may not take relative to this plan, can we make that conditional on that curb cut?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I concur with Joel, yes.
Okay.
And clearly, we would need to. This is probably not directly your bailiwick, but another of the issues that's come up is the question of the tall retaining wall that borders Bedford Road at that point, and any potential risk or change to it caused by the work you would propose to do. Is that some? First off, you've indicated in the past that you envision that, so far as you're aware right now, that wall is sufficient to manage what it would confront. Would you all take responsibility for not only guaranteeing that during the course of your work, but in perpetuity?
It's not our intention in perpetuity. We believe that wall is a state DOT constructed wall, and we can confirm that, we can endeavor to confirm that. The majority of that wall is within the state right-of-way.
Do you think the state would take responsibility for its future maintenance, or would they not?
I believe that they currently are, and we can check between the state and the church
Well, that would be a feat.
for that. But we would certainly be responsible for anything that happens during the construction. And,
All right, so,
right.
I mean, the future maintenance of that wall is an issue that we need to button down.
Understood.
So,
Isn't it an issue anyways?
Right.
yes, yes.
Yeah, so it's-
Right, sorry, I'm kicking with Joe. It's
Thank you.
I would break it down into two. Certainly during construction, it's absolutely our responsibility to make sure that wall that doesn't get harmed at all. And Anthony can certainly take you through the steps that we would take during construction. Post-construction, we don't believe it's actually on the church property or the property that we would be purchasing.
And I think that's
that area.
true.
So to the extent that we certainly couldn't take ownership over a wall that's not ours. But we
But
could
that would
certainly
be different from taking responsibility for its maintenance of
Well-
adjacent right-of-way, right?
Whatever whoever owns that wall would be coming after us should we harm it during construction. So, yeah.
But even going forward to the future, what do you have an experience, David, with how NYS DOT views those sorts of circumstances? Certainly our experience in less dramatic settings is that it is foisted off to the either the adjacent property owner or the community.
During construction or
No, under any
No.
circumstances.
General maintenance.
Right.
well.
Getting the grass mowed at an intersection that they own, so people could see where they're turning.
We can certainly look into it, but I can't represent to you now that we will take
Okay.
care of a wall that's not ours.
Understood.
Yeah.
So if you could assess what you think is the likely scenario there, that would be a help.
Okay.
Certainly the idea of this project will stress that wall in ways far different from the existing condition.
Would that be the case at post construction? Will there be more?
Okay, so
Yeah.
if I misrepresented that, correct me.
Well, no, I
feel
just
free.
want to make sure.
Yeah.
Post-construction, would there be more? Okay.
Good evening, Anthony Guccione with John Meyer Consulting. As Mr. Cooper and Pearson were saying, the wall would be monitored. We would, prior to construction, we would sort of survey the condition of the wall, make sure we would take notes and be able to quantify any, current conditions with the wall that were not
I mean,
adequate right
does
now.
anyone
It's kind
at
of
this
a-
point really know how it's built? I mean, is it tied back into the hillside? Or?
No, in the geotech, it hits on it. It talks about the condition of the wall, recommends monitoring during construction. Typically, in a situation like this, you would do a pre-construction survey where you'd make notes on deficiencies in the wall now, so they were not the responsibility of the developer afterwards. Then you would do a post-construction survey, compare the two, and any deficiencies that came about in the wall as a result of the construction would certainly be the developer's responsibility. So, as Mr. Cooper said, we would reach out to DOT, confirm that they will maintain future responsibility for the wall, and we'll let you know how we make out with that with them. We're assuming it is their wall right now. They presumably built it when constructing Bradford Road, so technically they would be responsible for the wall. Now we would assume we will check with them, confirm that, and
Okay, that'd be
that would
great.
be our stance at this point.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, could I again just emphasize, I think this is a very important issue for the village. And based upon everything I've heard, not just today, but previously, I think the village is looking for a continuing obligation on the part of the property owner to maintain that wall. And I think based upon my experience in some other municipalities where there are development proposals that abut a state highway, as the mayor said, I don't believe that the state is going to accept responsibility, and we really think that it has to be the responsibility of the property owner.
To the extent that, let me put it this way, we will look into who we need to talk to about getting that permission to maintain it, and then we can reconvene this conversation. Let me just answer, because I don't think that the last answer fully answered, Mr. Mayor, your question regarding the effect of the development post-construction on the wall. And I think the question that's being posed is, post-construction, will there be increased force on that wall by virtue of our use of the property?
When we designed the proposed wall that lies behind and above the existing wall, we kept it sufficiently back, so there should not be any new forces on that wall. Now, during construction is a different situation when they're digging and doing what they do to remove the earth. However, we built it back far enough. Typically, there's an angle of influence on a lower structure from an upper structure. We try to keep that back far enough where there should not be a long-term influence of any new loads from the construction we're proposing on the existing wall.
Is that also true of whatever the groundwater and water pressure and all of that sort of stuff?
Yes, we would, the walls would be designed to handle any additional pressures. We'd have a structural engineer would design those
Your wall
walls.
that's set into the property?
Our proposed walls, correct.
Okay.
We have two walls in the back and one in the front. Correct.
Okay.
So unless there are any other questions,
I do have a thought or comment that I'm not sure. It's something for your consideration. Given the, it has been stated in our mini meetings, the financial aspect of this, the revenue to the village, both school and the village itself, are important. If there'd be any consideration, or if you guys would consider, given the studies you've done, the confidence you have in your numbers, providing the village with some minimum amount guarantee revenue for a period of time, say 10 years or something along those lines, that the applicant would be willing to pay, regardless of what tax appraisal might indicate. That'd be a minimum, not a maximum, but a minimum. So say you guys have said something around $415,000. So say $400,000. Just throwing out a number. I'm not, more thinking here, just brainstorming than I am doing anything. But you'd be willing to pay the village for, a period of time. Takes kind of the financial a bit of the financial risk off our shoulders and puts them more in your camp where you've done the work and you're comfortable with the numbers, I think that would be helpful from a position of at least all the variables that we're considering. That'd be one variable that we wouldn't have to be as concerned with. Again, it's just a thought. I don't even have, we have no consensus here because we haven't discussed it among ourselves, but I'm not even quite sure how you structure something like that. But you're creative guys. If it's something that makes some sense and you're willing to consider, I just throw it out there as a consideration.
I'm sure we could speak to Mr. Sachs about the legality of that, and but we can talk about it. Without further ado, then, what we can do is go back to the visual analysis.
Great.
This board has seen the visual analysis before, but
Worth
given
seeing
the
again,
yeah, given
that requires that I dive under the table to switch the plug. Be happy to do it. Welcome back.
We're going to try to keep it on the public access. but
Sorry
yeah,
for the delay.
I think the two of us are going to walk up sometime.
We're up and running now. Back to the benchmark folks.
Good evening. Again, this is a video that we prepared previously. Most of the people in the room have probably seen it, but I just want to take it through as a bit of a refresher. It was prepared to really show the massing and the general site design of the site, what's proposed with the project. Not so much to show the detail. It doesn't show all the detail off-site. It doesn't show trees off the site to show the wooded character around the site, but it does show the trees that are going to remain on the site in their surveyed locations. So again, just it's a general massing drawing to get a diagram to get a sense for the site and what it's going to look like after construction. So here we're heading down Bedford Road northbound. You see the existing church on the right, the proposed driveway here on the right that would serve the benchmark facility is on the right. Now we're coming along Bedford Road north still. The existing retaining wall is on the right along Bedford Road, and you can see a glimpse of the benchmark facility proposed above the wall to the right. Here the wall's quite a bit taller. You don't really see the building above, but you do see the vegetation. And we're coming along to the left. You can see the existing trees and the wall along Benchmark, and Foxwoods would be to the left. Now we're coming to the north end of the site, and the residences to the north. Turning, looking back south now, back into the property. The white line depicts the existing property line between the residences and the benchmark facility. You can see the existing trees fortified with proposed buffering and the existing and the proposed retaining wall. The video's getting a little stuck, apologize. Here we go again. Now we're coming up the north side of the site, coming to the east. You can see the service area through the trees slightly, and you see the benchmark building at the rear. Apologize for the technical glitch here. Okay, now we're coming around the east side of the site, looking into the site from the residences above to the rear. Again, the trees on the neighboring properties are not depicted, but it does show some of the existing trees and some of the proposed buffering. There are 2 tiers of retaining walls below with a fence on top, a solid fence on top to assist with the buffering. And you can see glimpses of the benchmark building through the buffer. And that would be the benchmark building looking from the east. Now we're coming to the end of the benchmark subdivided property. Now you get a glimpse of the back of the church. This would be existing conditions to remain. There would be no changes proposed in this area. You see the church parking lot. We're coming down Maple Hill now, looking into the church parking lot. And this is the existing driveway off of Maple Hill Road that leads to the church. You see the church building on the right. You get an idea of mass and scale of the church. And now the proposed retaining wall to the right, and now we're coming in the existing, the proposed driveway for the benchmark facility off of Bedford Road. Heading towards the front, now you see the benchmark building. Coming up to the front drop-off area. And you see the proposed driveway and the proposed drop-off for the building. It's a 3-story building no higher than 39 feet in height. Gives you a little feel for the landscaping. You could see the proposed guardrail and the retaining wall to the left, which is above the existing retaining wall. And now we're coming around the north side of the building, turning and looking at the north elevation of the building. You can see the 2 tiers of retaining walls and the landscaping at the rear of the building. Get a little glimpse of some of the residences behind up on top of the hill. And we're coming around to the rear of the building where the service area would be. Again, the 2 tiers of retaining walls, the fence on top. Now heading back northbound around the north side of the building. Now we're going to elevate our view and look from more of an aerial bird's eye view of the site, if the video will cooperate. Okay. Now you get a sort of an aerial view, gives you a sense of the scale and the layout of the building and the parking, the driveways. You can see the existing existing trees and the proposed buffering at the perimeter, handicap parking spaces in the front. The drop-off. And again, apologize about those video glitches, but hopefully you can get a sense of the scale, the massing, and what the site will look like after it's constructed. Be happy to answer any questions.
You submitted in the recent packet from the 25th a roof plan?
Yes.
Is that something, by any chance, you can call up there or not?
We don't have that with us, the roof plan. We
Can you just describe the detailing you provided in that roof plan, again, also included in the materials on our website?
Right, yeah, the roof plan was provided because the Hudson Engineering, the village's consulting stormwater reviewer, was asking to show a roof plan so they could see that we could actually, our drainage divide we showed for our drainage study, our stormwater pollution prevention plan, shows a divide with half of the stormwater from the building going to the north, half of it going to the south. They just wanted to see that that roof could be designed to honor that drainage divide. So that's really what that showed. It showed the parapets, showed the drains, and how they could be split in those 2 directions. And they, during our meeting last week, they seemed satisfied that that could be accomplished.
And you have a green roof component?
Yeah, there are 2 portions of green roof, one to the north and one to the south side of the roof. There are some green infrastructure components to our stormwater plan. We have some portions of the roof would be green roofs. We'd have some stormwater planters, which would treat some of the runoff from the roof drain leaders coming off the roof. We have some porous pavement on the site. On the south side, there's a small parking lot between the church and the proposed Benchmark building, and there's porous pavement there where the water would actually drain right through the pavement. Again, that reduces the runoff from the site, makes our water quality volume that we need to treat that's after that less. We have CDS units, they're water quality structures beneath the site. I believe we have 4 of them now. The water will run through these structures. It's a hydrodynamic structure that has a swirl chamber, grease and grit separators in them, and it'll be treated there before it goes into our subsurface system, which is an open bottom system below the pavement. It provides a lot of void space beneath the parking lot where the stormwater can get stored and recharged back into the ground before the overflowing out into the site. We were actually, with our stormwater plan, able to accomplish a reduction in the rate of runoff from the site, as well as a reduction in the volume of runoff from the site, which is actually not really required by the DEC standards, but we're able to accomplish that. Oh, it's about let me see my notes. It's not here. Oh, here we go. We have a total of 94 units. Those units are about 45 inches in height and about 71 inches wide. They're arches. They're on top of a bed of gravel. And those units, we have a total of 94 units, and they provide over 10,000 cubic feet of storage.
All right, so if that's the end of your presentation, I suggest that we go back up front.
Yes, sir.
Provide any comment from the public, and having completed that, we'll go into work session and start our joint session with the Planning Commission.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I gotta show up with this video out like that. Oh, Mindy. This doesn't get much better.
It's freezing. 20-degree difference.
So, Susan, did you have any comments, questions, concerns to raise?
Well, I just had a quick question on the roof. I think we were talking about this earlier today. Have you located where the HVAC units and other types of mechanicals will be? So is there an indication of how well they will be screened? That's somewhat preliminary, I would imagine.
Yeah, unfortunately, the architects are not here. We haven't really gotten to that point of locating HVAC equipment on the roof. It is anticipated the HVAC equipment will go on the roof. There is a parapet to provide screening. We were able to actually we're finding a location for an emergency generator. We had contemplated the roof for that, but we now decided to put it at the rear of the building in the service area on grade, so it's much easier to provide sound attenuation and screening for that.
Anybody else have any other?
So if that stuff were in the parapet, that would still be visible from above?
There would be some kind of screening, some kind of fencing around it, presumably.
Can you talk to, I'm sorry, just nobody can hear you at home if you're not at the mic.
Sorry, again, I don't want to make believe I'm the architect and have the answers for all that. We haven't gotten to that point yet at this point, but there would be some screening of the units on the roof.
Okay, any further questions? If there are any members of the public who would like to comment, you're welcome to do so at this time. Just give us your name and address when you arrive.
Lipton Tom, 24 Maple Hill. I just want to talk about the Atria development. Here is a layout of the development.
This is the one in Rye that was used in the
Yes.
value analysis report?
Yes. This is the facility that they're talking about. This is the Atria. And the residences that they're comparing the cost for is based on basically here. And you can see from the Zillow pricing here that the pricing here is much, much less than, let's say, up here, which is in the $1 million class, versus the area here. This development
They
was
also-
Same houses?
Same exact houses?
well, they say that they are similar housing. Actually, the truth of the matter is that there's 261 single-family residents in the whole development. Of that total, 160, I think, is single-family, actual single, separate. There are some townhouses, and that's what they were comparing to. That's why they're getting the lower value. So if you look at this, okay, why is this value so much lower? Well, they bought Atria, and Atria really doesn't affect them that much, really. It's really, it's pretty hidden. I was down there and I looked at it, and you really can't see the development at all. And on this side, there's also a commercial area. Right? So when people bought housing here, they knew that the Atria was going to be built there. So the pricing already reflected the location of the property. Right? So that's why the pricing here is so much different than here. So, and all they're doing is they're comparing it to...
I just wonder, it looks like the
Bigger and bigger pieces of
much
property.
bigger homes and bigger pieces of property up top. Am I wrong? Am I just-
No, they're not. They are approximately the same size.
Really? I mean, it looks like the ones you pointed to in the circle are cluster homes.
No. The cluster homes are located here.
Uh-huh.
These are single family up here.
Okay.
These are single families
Right.
over here.
So that's what we're saying.
So people who bought the housing that they're comparing it to, they bought it knowing that the Atria is going to be there.
Okay.
Okay?
So I invite Mr. Burns to comment if you care to, or you can respond later if you prefer. Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I'd actually think on this point as well.
Wait your moment, if you would.
May you reply to both of us then?
Sure.
Rather than have to
Okay, sure.
jump back up and down a couple of times. I'm Bill Stoller, 69 Maple Hill, and I wanted to just, I didn't know that Mr. Tom was going to talk about that, but I took the trouble to Google all this morning. I have nothing to do with assessing values or anything like that. I can't comment on the valuation of this. But the report makes a couple of kind of errors in trying to compare this. One of them is they talk about 261 single-family homes. That's not true. As Mr. Tom was saying, there's 173. This is the opening page of the Belfair Homeowners Association offering plan, the first offering plan. The subsequent amendments to this didn't really change this in a substantial way. There are 261 homes, of which 173 are single-family detached homes, and about another 30 are described as single-family village homes, which are apparently also detached. So there's only 203 detached homes there. There's 46 duplex villas, whatever that means, and there's 12 attached townhouses. These were originally, in the original offering plan, designated to be for employees of the Rybrook and Blind Brook School District, later amended to say they were going to be affordable middle-income housing as designated by the village regulations, first to the people in the schools, then to the fire and police, then to village employees, and then open to anybody else. So that's what they are. The second point I wanted to make about this is that when Belfair was built, we're talking about the Belfair development. Belfair is pretty luxurious homes, not quite like Maple Hill or not quite like surrounding homes and not quite like Foxwood. When it was built, in the offering plan, it does talk about specifically the assisted living facility. They call it a senior residence. And it was designed and built at approximately the same time. It is in the original plans. So what Mr. Tom was saying is exactly correct, that this development included the assisted living, the senior residence. In fact, in the offering plan, all the notes, there's something called a senior residence member, and the member of the homeowners association there is the operator of a senior living facility and actually has a vote on the homeowners association. Residents of the senior members facility have use of the common areas, so these two things, that's assisted living and Belfair, are integrated in that way. It's also said that any Belfair homeowner, his or her immediate family, may become a member of the seniors club at the senior residence by a payment of a certain fee. At additional cost, members of the senior club have access to all facilities and amenities within the senior residence. That's the assisted living. And it goes on to say that, this is all from their offering plan, members, and this is members of Belfair, homeowners in Belfair, can purchase services a la carte at the same price that are paid by the residents of the senior residence. That again is the assisted living. Services including housekeeping and linen, transportation, personal laundry, a meal program, purchase per meal per diem as a discounted monthly package, et cetera, et cetera. There are, not only is there this service road that connects the atria. It wasn't originally built as an atria. It was another company that was proposed as the builder. Another company was proposed as the operator. It's now an atria. But we'll call it the atria because that's what it is. There is this service road that goes from the atria property right into the Belfair property. There's also crosswalks that go from the Belfair property to the atria property. These are with zebra striping for pedestrians. So this is really an integrated property together. This is the contemplation that the members of Belfair, people who buy the homes there, would be old enough and have enough means to make use of some of the facilities that was being offered in the assisted living. This is not a neighborhood anything like what we're talking about. We're talking about now putting an assisted living facility or anything, whatever we decide to put there. As I've said before, I'm not in particular against an assisted living. I'm against a development this large in this location. But we're talking about putting an assisted living facility into not a new neighborhood of homes, which is what was done at Belfair and Atria, but into an existing neighborhood of homes that have been built from the late 1950s or earlier, some of them, and of course Foxwood, which also goes back 15, 20, 30 years. I don't know exactly when. I'm not going to make a fool of myself again and give you a number that someone at Foxwood's going to tell me is wrong. But they do go back much further than the buildings at Belfair, which were built in the late 1990s, about 1998, 97, something like that. So to make a comparison between the two, to say that this is somehow, we can compare what went on there as far as property values, property changes, or any kind of comparison, I think we're still in the fruit department, but it's apples and oranges, okay? The other thing I would like to say about the study that was done of about 24 potential assisted living facilities, some of these were in fact nursing homes. In the list on page 51 of the Hudson Properties Advisors document, they listed some of them that they considered, and Bethel Nursing Home, Tarrytown Hall Care Center, which I unfortunately know something about, Schermacher Nursing Home, Bethel Nursing and Rehabilitation, King Street Nursing Home. These were some of the facilities that they looked at, and they rejected a comparison there. And they talk about an insufficient number of adjacent residential properties, of course, because none of these facilities, none of these kinds of facilities are usually placed in an existing residential neighborhood close up against homes. The atria is different, but the atria in Rybrook was built to go with Belfair. I saw in some document, unfortunately, I saw it this morning and I couldn't find it when I went to print it out, that the people who were building what became the atria were actually aligned somehow with the sponsors of Belfair in some financial way. They weren't the same developer, but they were somehow economically co-joined in some fashion. This is nothing like what's going on here, where an independent operator is coming in, wants to gouge out all the hill, dynamite blast, whatever they're going to do to take out these things. There's one of the things that was submitted to you was how many truck trips it's going to be. It's larger trucks and fewer trips than we had been talking about earlier, but still we're talking about something like 50 truck trips a day for a period of 2.5 months or more, just to get the hill out, and never mind all the trucks that have to come in to bring the steel and the concrete and everything in. All this taking place in a residential area, and now we saw today they're talking about where they're going to put the generator. Now the generator is going to go in the back. Well, what's the back? The back is what's closest to the homes, including mine. And any generator of this kind of facility is going to have to be tested on a regular basis, so we can look forward to more of that. But the point I wanted to make was that this study, this comparison of the drop in home values because of between existing homes and the addition of an assisted living facility to it, it can't be compared to what we're doing here. They were built together, not put into an existing neighborhood, and that was the point I wanted to make. And the gentleman can respond to that.
You want to respond to that?
Okay. There's actually really 2 or 3 different issues I want to respond to. One is the issue about the proximity of the houses, the values that are different. If you look at the same size house compared to the same size house that's farther away, then you see that there's similar values. If you're looking at larger houses that are farther away, of course, they're different values. But if you're comparing a 1,800 square foot house to an 1,800 square foot house, each one having a 500 square foot finished then you're going to see that the values are the same or very, very similar.
So your argument is in essence, on a per square foot basis.
Yes.
The homes in Belfair are all
Yes.
selling in a very narrow range.
Yes.
Sorry, John, just for the record, because I think it's important to stress so the board sees, is that if you look at the back of Mr. Burns' report from page 62 on, he gives you the precise square footages of the houses that he used for each comparator, and so it's not just a random pick. You can see how the similarities are.
Right. It wasn't as though I took a house that sold at $600,000 compared to another $600,000 house. I did it on a price per square foot, so it would isolate out all the other variables.
Okay.
Okay. Because there's houses that do sell over $1 million. There's houses that sell at $500,000. but you have to compare the same size house, what I call a similar structured house, roughly the same amount of square footage above grade, finished, and the same amount of square footage below grade, if you compare that to a similar house with the same square footage above and below grade. Can't compare it to a house that has, 3,000 square feet above grade and compared to a 1,000, vice versa. All of the houses there are on their own separate lots. Some of them do have walls that are attached to each other, but every property there is on its own separate lot. So I may have misspoke when I said they're all detached single-family. They're not all detached single-family, but they're all fee simple.
And the sale price per square foot is not much affected by whether it's a common wall or freestanding?
Well, like I said, I'm comparing apples to apples, okay? And that, actually, it doesn't make much of a difference, okay? In answer to the other question, about the fact that it was all built at the same time, yes, and that's obvious, and everybody knows that, and it wasn't as though anybody was trying to hide that issue. This is a forward-looking report, looking at what happens if it's already there. I can't tell you what's going to happen if it's, it's really a question of what's the amount of time that's elapsed between when the houses are built and when the senior living facility is built. If it's built at the same time versus if it's years later, and now I'm studying the values, the sale prices after it's already built. My report actually outlines the sale prices before, during, and after construction of the facility, and there's no difference. This report tracks sales all the way back to, I think, the year 2000 or 1999, and there's no difference. It's not as though after it was built, then all of a sudden there was a big impact on values. It didn't show that. The data,
although the neighbors argue that the anticipated development was known, and therefore anyone who bought near it knew what was coming.
what about the people that bought after it was already built? Bought last year or the year before last?
Right.
And it was already there. So they already knew that it was there. So that's the whole point. In 5 years, 10 years, whatever, whenever Benchmark is built, someone goes to buy a house, they know it's there. It's the same thing.
Yeah, well, except that, I guess the concern is that the whole market value has adjusted downwards for the Atria, so even sales afterwards reflect the fact that it was there. Had that not been there, those homes may be some percentage higher in value, and
That's
the
what
existence of Atria there has lowered them permanently.
But that's what my report shows, is that the houses that are closer to, here's the actual filed map, and I'll hand it to you if you'd like to take a look at it. But it shows that the houses that are closer to the Atria did not sell and are still not selling at a lower price per square foot compared to the houses that are farther from Atria. That's what the numbers show.
And it also shows that their houses went up in value considerably since you started tracking.
That's right.
in
That was
comparison
one
to the
other,
others.
yes, I forgot to mention that was one other part of the report, was to show the trend in values.
Right.
And that's why I showed matched pairs, showing the trend in values.
Is there? I wanted to ask you before. Is there a margin of error when you're talking about that there was the net increase of or decrease in property value? Is there a margin of error that's
Of
used
course,
on a national
in any
average?
appraisal, in any analysis, but especially in an appraisal, there's always a margin of error. No appraiser can.
What is that?
There's no specific number. I generally like to believe if it's less than roughly 5 to 10% in an appraisal, if two appraisers do appraisals, and they come in at numbers that are within 5 or 10% of each other, I think that's pretty good. If you see that they're exactly the same, then something's probably wrong.
John, I'm still having a bit of trouble understanding this. So just help me through this. So, if the argument is that the Atria, by its presence, conditioned the market lower, everybody built their houses. This whole development was built knowing that Atria was there. The houses, say it lowered. If Atria wasn't there, they'd be 10% higher. Now they're 10.
That's not true.
Okay.
This shows that that's not true.
How does it show what the market would have been without the absence of Atria.
Because what it does is it measures the prices of the houses that are in Belfair, but they're farther away from the Atria. So
Yeah.
those houses didn't have any theoretical negative impact that would have been caused by the Atria.
Well, they're still linked to the project itself, though, right?
So
I mean,
you-
are those houses that are further out, they could be 10% lower than they would otherwise be as well?
If you're suggesting that the houses that are half a mile away are affected by the fact that the Atria is there,
I'm suggesting
I
that
just don't...
64 Belfair Road, which is a ways away from the Atria site, if Atria wasn't there, theoretically, I'm just throwing a number out, would be 10% higher. The market for this development was conditioned lower by an amount. So for what the neighbors are arguing is that you put this in there, you're going to lower their home values by some amount. Call it whatever you want to call it, 10%. If you measure 5 years from now, their home prices may have risen from that lower level, but it's still conditioned the market lower. So it depends. So while your report's forward-looking, it is also conditioned on a starting place where you're valuing the homes to begin with.
To believe that, you'd have to believe that the houses that are, like you said, a half a mile away or whatever, that can't see the Atria, that, yes, they know it's there, and yes, it's technically part of their development, but maybe somebody has no use whatsoever for the Atria, and they just buy their house there. You'd have to believe that they paid less and that the seller took less because the Atria is a half mile away. I just find that pretty far-fetched.
Okay. So that's the crux, is that the reliance on, or the counter is, strictly speaking. Now, did you look at any of the houses that were outside of the Belfair relative to the houses that were in Belfair?
No, because the Belfair houses were relatively homogeneous with each other. Same quality of construction, same age, same condition, same style. It didn't make sense to compare a house that was, a house outside of Belfair could be a 200-year-old antique farmhouse, and it just wouldn't be comparable. So to try to compare that, it just wouldn't make any sense.
Also, a lot of them are in Greenwich, which is not...
Well, that's true. It is on the Greenwich line.
Oh, good point, good point.
So they'd be
that's
lower
across
because
the
they were in
street.
Greenwich. Gotcha. All right.
All right?
Yeah.
All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anybody else have a comment?
One question before-
Surely.
Yeah, sure.
You got to come up, so, or
Joel's
yeah,
mic.
okay.
Does the suggestion that the Atria is part of the comprehensive master plan for this whole development and the services are all integrated, and it was built that way as sort of one homogeneous co-sharing development, does that affect your analysis?
I don't believe it does, no.
For the record, that's Russ Klein, Chairman of the Planning Commission.
Thank you.
We're segueing nicely into the present.
Yes, we are.
David Keller on the Planning Commission. You compared the prices of the houses that were close to the Atria site versus the overall average.
No, I used houses that were close to the Atria site versus houses that were not next to the Atria site.
I don't believe that's what the comparison is in the report or in the cover memo. I think you talked about everything inclusive of those that were nearby.
No, for each house that sold that was near the Atria, I found houses that were similar size.
No, I know
Oh, okay.
that you did that, but when
Okay.
you did the comparison of like 1.3%, whatever, not 1 point something percent versus 4%, right? The
Right,
growth
that was an
rates.
average of the difference, yes.
But the higher number included those that were part of the lower Venn diagram. It wasn't left versus right. It was those that were nearby versus everything. So the question I have is, well, we can go more about
Okay.
this later. We'll pull it. I don't have it here in front of me, but yes.
Archie, you're trying to find the impact.
Right, right. So
What I want to know is what's the average price change for those properties that you looked at that were not in close proximity to the Atria?
Okay, let me just run through it really quickly so we all are on the same page. For each house that sold that was next to the Atria, I found sales of houses that were similar size, square footage, that were not close to the Atria. And for each one that sold, I found at least 3, sometimes 4 or 5, or maybe 6, and I compared them on a price per square foot. So you have the house that sold near the atria, 3 or 4 or 5 houses that sold that are not near the atria on a price per square foot. Then I took the average of the price per square foot of the ones that sold compared to the price at atria. And sometimes those averages were a little higher, sometimes were a little bit lower, and I did an average of those averages. That's where the 1% and the 4% come from.
This is the Zarin cover.
I didn't write that.
But I know that. But they're the same.
Your fault.
But they're the same numbers that are in the value
Sure.
impact analysis.
Sure.
And it's the same numbers. It says that the average sales price let's see, residences located directly adjacent to the atria facility deviated from the average sales price in the development by negative 1.6%, and deviated from the median sales price by 4.2%. So it's talking about the entire development.
It's a misstatement. What he meant to say, and I'm sorry, it's a misstatement. What he meant to say, not compared to all of the houses in the development, but compared to the houses that are not near the atria in the development. That's what it's supposed to say.
That's an important distinction.
That's what it's supposed to say.
Okay, I'm looking at now your page 3, and it says not adjacent to atria. That's fine. But going back to the other one, the other question I had for you was, what would have happened if you had done an analysis, if you had properties prior to 1999, which you don't have, because Belfair opened in 1999, was completed in 2001, Atria was completed in 2003.
Right.
So you really don't have a before and after, and as Trustee Cunningham was talking about, really it's a before versus after issue for homeowners, and that does not go into your analysis. That's not in your analysis because you can't talk about how prices would change because there were no houses there before.
They didn't exist.
So if there's a market trend over time, theoretically, that market trend should be impacting everybody, but off of different bases.
Let me ask you, John, based on your expert opinion, is there a difference in your assessment? Would there be an impact in the prices just because the atria was then plopped into this exhibit?
In other words, if the question is this, if they built Belfair first, and then years later they built the atria, is your question, would that decrease the values?
Well, I think that's what I'm hearing from the community is asking as their question. And I don't think you're able to, given what's there. I don't think the report answers that question. That's all I'm trying to say.
It can't answer that question because it's not possible to know the answer to that. But what it can measure is the impact on value, based on proximity to it.
That's right.
All right, thank you. Joe?
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Diane Saul at 74 Maple Hill. I happen to live on the upper side of Maple Hill. While I appreciate all the work that has gone into this analysis, I think it's just common sense. I have a modest ranch, open window plan, deck hanging out front, looking at single houses and trees right now. What is the value of my property when I now look down at a commercial-sized property with HVAC systems, trucks going in and out? It's just common sense to me. That's all I want to say.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Board. Thank
Welcome.
you for the opportunity. My name is Yuri Paraschek. I live at 45 Maple Hill in Pleasantville. We've been looking at this discussion at some rather remote way. We're looking at all these numbers about the value of homes and the rest. Two numbers I'd like to put in front of you. One is that the median change in home price is about maybe 4.2%. Maybe that's one standard deviation. I don't know what your metrics are. I point out again
the median change
in the value of homes due to putting this atria
based on the
based on
Adrian
their
Rye.
analysis. Yeah, let's assume it's correct. The point is that the revenue this proposed facility is going to generate for the village is less than 0.5% of total revenue for the village. It's even less than that for the school board. So the error they describe in the value of homes which the value of a home directly translates to taxable value, is much higher than the error, than the value we're going to get from this building. So I ask, why are we putting this thing in here in the first place? I'd also like to be able to show the planning board a number of renderings I had done by an engineering firm. I see there's some at the back. The other thing is, I think it was noble and great that you guys are thinking about the retaining wall in front of that road, and that somebody needs to maintain it. What about all the subsidence and degradation of foundations that's going to happen to the buildings around there? The homeowners' properties. Who's going to do a study there? Are we? The other thing is, it continually amazes me that we'll keep looking at this as some benefit to this village. I understand, Mr. Mayor, I understand, Board, that we need to generate revenue. Right? But I also understand when you guys pulled up this number about Ossining, somebody provided the revenues from Ossining. I did a study. There's a website called New York, something about Transparency of New York, about who makes what money, how much do we spend across the whole villages and towns and cities in New York. And this village spends 38% more on taxes per household than Ossining does. I'm not saying why that is. We maybe have a better quality of life. You know,
You mean homeowners pay 30%
homeowners pay
more?
30% more per person. Right? They have a 25,000 population, and I forget exactly, but I can give you the numbers. That 38% is a huge difference compared to what we're going to get from this development. So why are we doing it?
I'm guessing that the difference there with Ossining, without digging into the numbers, is that they have a bigger commercial base.
That's as may be, Mr. Mayor. That's as may be. But the fact is the fact. And unless we get a control of the village spending, unless we find ways to reduce this $60,000 is the cost of 2 Prius cars that we have here. That, I'm not sure, is it 2 or 1 that the parking attendants use? One.
We have another one for the code
Right.
enforcement officer.
So, you know, where's the parking that needs the cars? I could walk across this village in half an hour. Why are we spending this kind of money? If we didn't, we wouldn't have to have this. In addition, I just think that, I would like to keep this, and so would my neighbors, a village with a good quality of life. And I understand that we need to generate revenue. But shoving this thing into our neighborhood, I point out the following thing. It was amazing that Hudson went through 26 different properties before they could find even something similar to what they're planning to do here. Why is that? Because there isn't anything like this. And when Lipton's son came in and gave us an analysis from Massachusetts, I believe he had it about right. Now, there's probably some scaling factors involved in this. But again, I asked the village board, I asked the planning board, what good is this going to do for the village? Are we going to have another monstrosity like that big NASA, NSA-like building down there?
Which, you're referring to the former MLA Michael?
Yeah. I mean, I'm glad it's down there, not on our property. Thank you for that.
Time out on the subject of benchmark. Brief aside on the subject of Henkel. The Henkel building is built on the exact same footprint as the old MLA building. Right. And the front of that building, which will be a glassed-in office wing, has yet to be built. So if you drive by and see the existing foundation, same foundation the old building had, that's where the office wing will go. So you call it a monstrosity. I can tell you, and I think there aren't too many people who know more about that situation than I do.
So, yes,
that is a win for the village of Pleasantville in a big, big way.
How much revenue are we generating then, Mr. Mayor?
Long story there, too. That building has been massively overassessed because somebody did something 25 years ago. It was paying on a payment in lieu of taxes. I don't want to diverge into that whole
revenue?
story. The total revenue for is I'm not going to quote the number. It's the subject of a tax, sir, right now.
It's the subject of what, sir?
Tax.
Long story. Stop and Shop owned the property.
So they're challenging the taxes on that now?
No, Stop and Shop, when it owned the property, challenging. We're diverging. I'm more than happy to talk to you until the cows come home about that.
It might seem a divergence to the board, but it's a direct impact. The point here being, we're trying to generate revenue for this village.
No doubt.
Let's try and do it in an appropriate manner.
That's what we're trying to do.
Actually, I don't
Yuri,
think with this...
I respect that, and as you well know, nobody's made a decision. I'll speak for myself. There are two very positive things about this project. One is it would generate revenue.
0.5%.
Two is it would provide a use that I think would be a benefit to the community. That doesn't mean it's appropriate in this location.
Okay. So may I, Mr. Mayor, show my renderings to the planning board? I have about 12 of them. and I won't
I
take
don't
a lot
know
of
how
time.
we will make that happen. You are proposing to project them?
Yes, sir.
So we need to plan ahead to do that. So if you want to send them to us, we'll get them to the Planning Commission.
No, I'd like to do that in the presence of the people who are watching. You see, you're putting me at a disadvantage.
Yuri, if you want to come and hook up a laptop to a projector, you got to give us a little bit of a heads up. We're not trying to put you at any kind of a disadvantage.
Sir, there's a VGA connector
And
there. I
that
can
is
put
not
right here, we
our
can put it right
projector.
there.
That belongs to John Meyer Consulting.
Well, we'll
So-
use this one then. As I understand it, the VGA connector is somewhere around here. Are you denying me that, Mr. Mayor?
I'm denying you the opportunity to do that now. If you had called ahead and said, we need to set this up, we would have been totally willing to do that, just as we were for Lipton when he came.
Fair enough. Thank you,
We'll
Mr.
be
Mayor.
more than happy to distribute
Very
those.
good.
We'll be more than happy to welcome you back on another occasion.
I thank you. So, in conclusion, I'd like to say this development provides marginal value to the village. It changes the complete character of where we live. Nothing like this has ever been built before, as far as we can tell, in Westchester. Nobody's pushed something into an existing development in this way, and I would like to see it put somewhere else. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, my name's Steve Munford, 19 Maple Hill Road, and we also have property at 48 Eastview Avenue. Everything is directed towards you guys. I have no problem with the gentleman over here. They're just doing their job. But nothing they say is legally binding, means anything. It's all just words. What this gentleman just said is everything. The quality of life in Pleasantville is, to me, my family's been here for 60 years, and we like it because it's a small town. It's got small town values. We know almost everybody around. I've known people for years here. And to start building it up this way, to put this in, we all know, I mean, it's almost obvious that when you're going to start a project like this in the back of a church, which has a dwindling base, that 5 years from now, we're all going to be here again because they're going to want to sell the rest of that church and build that place bigger and bigger. And once you get it in there, it's going to happen. There's no question about it. Once you start something, this is a very small thing they're showing us here. And they're putting tons of money into it. They want it. They can tell that the church is going to fall apart, and they're going to be able to buy the rest of the property and build it up. We all know this is going to happen. You're going to deny it, you're going to say we're not going to talk about this right now because that's further down the line, but we'll see. I hope it doesn't happen. I think it will. This is a nice town. If we want to make it like Scarsdale or Bronxville and build it up and get a bigger tax base from commercial interests, that's what's going to happen. You guys have the power, you can do that. But if you do that, you're going to take what makes Pleasantville a great place to live, and you're going to start deteriorating it. That's all I have to say.
I thank you for that. I just add to that. I mean, I think all of us bear those thoughts in mind every day. One of the problems we confront, and we confront it as a community, not specific to this project, is that we had a bigger commercial base years ago, and we had a bigger population years ago. So Pleasantville is both smaller in population and more disproportionately residential than it was 10 years ago, 20 years ago, almost each decade back through the 20th century, certainly through the 30s and 40s. So the world has changed in lots of ways, and what we are collectively charged with trying to figure out is whether we need to change in response to it. this application has come to us, and we're working our way through this process with all of you, but those issues are clearly in the background. So, anybody else?
My name is Dan Blaney. I'm at 50 Maple Hill Road. Just a quick comment on the tax issue report. Bill, if I were you, I would ask for error and omissions and not pay for the report. Seeing that the report was based on totally faulty means, as we were discussing here. Thank you to the Planning Commission for bringing up those good points. Seems like it's fairly obvious to everybody here that
You're referring to the value analysis, not
comparing the houses,
not the tax.
Yeah, comparing it to houses that are part of the development of an assisted living facility is just completely faulty. They need to do a whole new report if they want to make that sound good. If anything, what came out of it is that they did admit that the housing does go down, although maybe not significantly. Significant means significant to me is significant. It's marginal. It's enough that your houses are going down, and they're admitting that. So I think that that's significant. Talking about the master plan, I went back and read it just to see whether or not there's an assisted living facility mentioned on there. Actually, if you look on the parking, assisted living facilities are listed on your master plan. And it gives a criteria for how many parking spaces per units and all that kind of stuff. I don't know if you're aware of that. Yes? No?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Then the truck turning radii, I was taking a look at that. I'm a professional engineer, civil engineer, so I do that.
Did you see the November 25th?
Yeah, the plan.
Submission?
The plan.
Okay.
So I had the 4 turns in and out. I'm a professional engineer, so I know a little bit about this. I would recommend that the board tell the design engineers to probably widen that curve. They're trying to stay away from the church as much as possible, which is whatever. But the trucks can't make it in. They're auto turn. The program, are you using auto turn? Yeah. They're driving the tires right on the curb. And only a truck who is a master 20-year veteran of truck driving is going to make that turn. You probably want to leave a little room for error.
And if you were doing it, how much would you widen it?
I would give it probably at least another foot.
Okay.
On sides. And then there's also one of them where the truck comes down and he has to take the other direction in order to make the turn going, I think, northbound on Bedford.
Is that the fire truck or the commercial truck?
Whatever truck they've got there.
The fire truck, Mr. Pearson referred to that. I believe he indicated that the commercial truck stayed within the lane. A fire truck needed a piece of the other lane.
Okay, fair enough. Talking about taxes, going back and forth, how much money is it going to be, and the whole Foxwood where they grieved it, and you were talking about maybe making an agreement. Can you make an agreement or have them write in that they can't grieve within 20 years, and then they'll never be able to grieve when it's written in?
We do that for everybody?
Well, this is the deal. We've got them asking for you. You're the one that has the leverage. As soon as you say okay to this project, then you don't have any more leverage. So you should have it in the beginning, in the floating zone.
Well, we suggested that tonight, I think.
You did.
See what happens.
Suggested the idea of some sort of a deal. I don't know if they'd be part of the
Not
zone.
that you can't cert, but
it would be
some sort of
minimum.
a minimum
For a period
value
of
that you
time.
would get.
Yes, I think I did hear that, but even still, just, okay.
Right.
I think that's on the right track if you keep going. And the secret document, I know they had an environmental assessment form, if I get all my acronyms correct. Have they submitted the environmental assessment documents that support that form, or only the form?
You talking about the long form SECRA versus the short form SECRA?
Yeah, and all the
not sure if you're
documents.
asking.
Everything we've gotten, in terms of documentation and submittals, everything you're seeing the last few meetings supports the statements on the EAF or is supplemental to the EAF. So is there a specific area of the EAF or the environmental impact statement that you wanted to see more?
Well, I think
documentation?
everything that's on that EAF should be supported with documentation.
It is, and they've
It
been
is.
methodically approaching that, and if there's questions coming from their submittals, those have been referred to our technical staff to comment on, so there's been some communication back and forth that way, but
And-
they are responding to everything on the EAF.
And recognize the way the system works. At the applicant's expense, we have BFJ Planning Susan here as our consultant planner representing the village, and several sub-consultants, including Hudson Engineering, looking at the engineering aspects of it, again, at the client's expense, but representing the village. And their job is to vet what we're given, ask further questions, probe it, find issues, problems, and concerns, request more information, and ultimately also to advise us about what they see as the impacts. Similarly, Jeff Econom, our Superintendent of Public Works, hello Jeff, has been and will continue to be part of that process, as has the Building Department, Pleasantville Fire Department, et cetera.
Okay, yeah, right, that's good. And now spot zoning. They wrote a letter, they had that big long letter that had comment, response,
Right.
and then they referred to a letter about spot zoning, or the floating zone. In that, they write that there's only 2 other privately owned parcels that would, that fit the criteria for the floating zone, of which the 2 are both within that half-mile radius of this site, which then crosses them
Right.
off.
You saw that map, remember? Right.
Yes, I saw the map, and now I have a written letter that I've read more closely. So there are no other sites in Pleasantville that fit this criteria.
Unless someone were to acquire multiple sites and combine them.
Right, which we discussed whether or not that was ridiculous or not.
I mean, never say never.
Okay, so then when the public hearing goes, the letters will go out to everybody within 300 feet of those lines.
I think that the letters would go out to everyone within 300 feet of potential sites, correct?
Right, so if we're saying that a potential site is anybody along those lines that has 5 houses,
I
that we
mean,
can
you know,
get together,
the what ifs.
Well,
I mean, that,
well,
right. I mean, when
to
we,
drill down a little bit,
Yeah.
we're saying either what if that happens, in which case everybody gets a letter, or if that's a what if hypothetical scenario that we're not going to look at, well then we're only looking at 0 sites.
Well,
that
I mean,
have
if
an
it
alternative.
happened, the letters would have to go out. I mean, it wouldn't be
your point
a
is,
matter of it
your
not.
point is the hearing about the zoning change to create the floating zone.
Yes.
Your argument is that because it's theoretically possible for someone to acquire multiple properties and combine them to meet the critical mass.
To build an assisted living.
I mean, theoretically, I suppose that's possible.
Yes, and if we're going to say this is theoretically but never going to happen, well then maybe we should look at it that way, and then we say there are no sites in Pleasantville.
Well, there are
Because that's
sites
what
in
the letter
Pleasantville.
says.
We've identified 3 of them, right?
No.
This one and 2 others.
They identified, right.
Mm-hmm.
The 2 others
Right.
are crossed off because they're within the half-mile of this site.
Right.
So it doesn't, so therefore it's 0.
Except that until the point at which that site is allowed to do it, there are still 3.
Right. Because this isn't a done deal.
Right.
Because the floating zone is before this.
Right.
Chicken and egg.
Right.
So there's 3 sites, 2 of which are already developed. Okay, so how many sites would then make it spot zoning? That's what I'm drilling down to.
I don't know the answer.
To put you on the spot.
That
Spot
would be a
zoning.
question for me. I'm not, that would, I'm not
Does
sure.
it have to
where-
be 0? I mean, because right now we're looking at, if benchmark were to go, then the floating zone was put into Pleasantville.
The point of the
for
verbiage
this.
in the floating zone was to say that if the use were to be permitted in a specific location, based on the terms required, and that use were to be established, then you would create a perimeter around it that say you don't want another one to be right next door. That's what the perimeter is about. And your point is, if the benchmark thing were to be proposed and established, the other 2 sites that are, quote, as of right, would be knocked out because they're too close.
Correct.
All true. Just a question, in that case, of who got to the finish line first.
Someone's in the lead, because they're the one putting this thing together.
No doubt. I mean,
So-
clearly, we're talking about this as a coordinated review, not only about the zoning change, but the zoning change for this use in that location.
Right.
So,
So you don't find it funny that I would find it funny as a resident saying that there's,
nope. All right, brief break to change tapes. Welcome back. Brief break for tape changing.
Okay, so as a resident, I find it funny that a developer can come into this room, present a plan, call it a floating zone, and say that there's 3 spots open in the whole village. However, when I put this one together, I'm the only one in town.
We can change that verbiage however you would like.
No, not to me. I want you guys to do what's right for the village.
It's our view, I think, that having a separation requirement would be desirable. That is, if an assisted living project were to be created anywhere permitted under these terms, you wouldn't want another one very close.
It's not unusual verbiage to have a limited use.
Yeah. I get that.
Yeah.
I understand the whole
So
concept.
where are you going with this? I don't understand.
So, I mean, if you're suggesting they're trying to knock out their competition.
For sale.
No matter how you
say,
slice
why
it,
isn't that?
it's spot zoning because the people who are writing this floating zone are the only game in town after they put it up.
Look, I mean, you can.
Yeah, I don't know. I find it funny, and you're not understanding my.
No,
maybe
I
I'm not
understand the
explaining
point you're
myself
making,
right.
but as
Okay,
a
you do
legal
understand.
matter, as a legal matter, I don't think your argument produces what's known as spot zoning. If your argument is, these guys would, plant their roots and knock out their potential competition, then I understand what you're saying. But I do think if we were to enact this or some variant of it, the idea of a separation requirement is a good and appropriate thing. You don't want too many of these too close.
Yeah, I don't want a second one. You're right.
So, I mean, it seems that we're on the same page about that.
About that, yes. I still think that, and even though legally the spot zoning thing, it doesn't mean you can't make a decision about that what their proposal is sounds funny because they're going to be the only game in town.
We could decide whatever we wanted about whether to accept it or not, unrelated to any legal basis
Right. I hope
for
you do that.
your argument.
I hope you do that. Now, when you also do that, people were, commenting about how maybe the church will go. There's a house across the street that has 3 acres. Can you write it in there, as you're saying, can't be within ½ acre, even if it's the same owner, so that they can't expand onto the church property and they can't expand across the street?
I mean, the way it's written right now, if, for example, they were to build this and the church later went out of business and its property were for sale, that would be the subject of a whole nother application requiring another zoning change. True?
Well, the underlying zoning would be what it is unless there's a
Right.
petition for something else, yes.
So an applicant, a different user, or whatever, would have to come forward. I can say that, as many of you know, we spent some time negotiating with the Methodist Church about the possibility of our buying it for a new village hall, selling this building, and in the end, for a variety of reasons, that couldn't be accomplished. But there were other buyers interested in that building, including other religious uses. So if in the hypothetical that the Methodist Church ceased to exist at some point in the future, can't say what would happen. All I can say is, at least as of a year and a half ago, there were other religious uses anxious to buy it. So,
Okay, but you won't comment on whether or not it would be allowed to be an expanded
it would
benchmark.
not be allowed as of
Go through
right.
this whole process.
They would have to come and request rezoning of that site.
Right, but the floating zone's already there. And it's not 3 acres though, but they wouldn't be able to,
Right, it's not 3 acres.
they wouldn't be able to put that together and say, well, yeah, we do have the 3 acres because we have the 3 acres here. How does that work?
When there's a floating zone, nothing is allowed as of right. Every time a property owner and applicant comes, they have to request the board's permission and ascertain whether the board, after a public hearing, would grant the zone change that would allow the zone to land on a particular piece of property.
And would the hypothetical Methodist Church site, the remaining Methodist Church site, which is not in and of itself big enough to fulfill the terms of this floating zone, be simply, could you simply add that to the existing benchmark site in the hypothetical that were built?
I don't believe the way that the draft zoning has been prepared that it would be.
Okay.
Can we request that is
there's
done
that
that way?
answer.
Can we request that that's done that way?
He's
saying that it is.
that
That's
in
the way it
current
is right
draft
now.
proposal for the zoning
Right.
change,
Yeah.
it's written that way.
Okay, we got it on TV.
We're
Which
definitely
means
not,
everything.
we're not trying to hoodwink anyone, I can assure you of
We've
that.
put everything on
Right,
TV.
yeah.
We've put everything on the website.
All right, good enough. Now zoning. What zoning does this fall under? If I go and look under your zoning for the offsets and all that kind of stuff,
It's
What-
a new category, a floating zone that is overlain upon the underlying zoning and changes the permitted uses.
right. So this is on a triple R. Does that mean offsets and all that would go back to triple R, or what do I look for? You're going to make a new chart?
It's a different, it applies different zoning.
Is it a case-by-case basis? I mean, I don't understand.
It would be, yes.
The triple R, the triple R is erased, so to speak, under the zone.
Right, so I guess what I'm getting at is that front offset that they have on Bedford, I think if I could read the text font on an 11 by 17, I think it says 65 feet or 68 feet.
From the property line
From the property
to
line
the
on
front of the
Bedford.
building?
Yes, to the
Okay.
building base, the corner or whatever it is. And that's the closest point. Triple R is 100 feet, and I know that's going to be erased. But if you look at Briarcliff Atria, I tried to look at other like-minded facilities to find out what the offsets are in each individual town.
Triple R requires a 100-foot front yard.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Okay.
Trust but verify.
Yeah. That
Atria-
surprises me. I mean,
Atria
you don't
and
have
Briarcliff.
100-foot
That
front.
Mike's sitting right
Yeah.
there.
40 feet?
Oh, I didn't see you there. You were behind the computer. I was going to say 100-foot front yards is
I'm looking at
highly
the
unlikely.
wrong chart. Triple R, minimum lot frontage.
That's frontage, not yard.
That's the width of the lot,
Got it. So what is the setback?
40 feet.
What is that called? Front yard.
That's the depth of the front yard.
Got it. Because these things are so big, the one in Atria in Briarcliff, they have 100-foot. I printed it off the internet. They have 100-foot for the front and the back, which seems front yard. I guess that's the same thing. And rear yard, is that what I'm talking about? Am I have it mistaken? Okay, so maybe I'm mistaken then. I'm wondering if the 65 feet should be pushed back a little bit. It seems like it encroaches on the road.
I mean,
or is that-
the issue on that particular site is that obviously the applicant is trying to balance a bunch of issues, including the grading on the site and how close the back of the site gets to the property line and the adjacent homeowner. So because it's such an unusual site with that high retaining wall, the aesthetic dynamics are obviously different than would be the case on a flat property against the road. So, but your point is taken and registered. I understand.
Okay, and then the 8-inch pipe that they're talking about on Bedford Road, that they're going to build a doghouse manhole on. I read the stormwater, the SWIP. Is there any reason why you don't upgrade the pipe? Because 8 inches, you're designing it, but what they're saying is that in a heavy intensity storm occurrence, the water's going to come up and run on Bedford Road, which now people are driving on extra flooding. So
Right. Well,
can't they just upgrade the
it's not
pipe?
extra flooding. At the moment, water pours over that retaining wall onto Bedford Road. The problem we have, and I can't speak to this specifically, but in general, we, like a lot of central Westchester communities, are confronted with the reality that we can move water out of one neighborhood and flood the next one faster. So it's all a complicating balancing act.
No, I understand that.
Yeah.
So, okay, so you're...
I mean, we're looking on our side of the table at a bunch of different things having to do with the stormwater flow off that hillside, through the detention areas, the meadows adjacent to Foxwood, through the Conde detention pond, down Grandview, long story. So,
To-
I mean,
to the other
but
basin.
Can we get an
all I can say
engineer's-
is, you know, these guys have provided their stormwater plan. Jeff Econom, our Public Works Superintendent and a certified engineer, Mike Test, the building inspector, BFJ Planning, and their sub, Hudson Engineering, are all looking at that intensely.
Okay. Interior and exterior courtyards, I'm not sure that those dimensions meet your village requirements.
But again, it's new requirements in this new zone.
I think your chart that you have, isn't that for all of the, no matter what zoning you're in?
No, this would be newly defined.
So, but again, point well taken. Here's my suggestion. If you want to just jot a quick email to me or to Patty, our emails are on the website, with a couple of those concerns, we're happy to chase that down.
Sure. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, just
Yes.
a couple of quick points,
Okay.
sorry. I realize it's 10 o'clock, we
Yeah,
haven't even
and
had
we
to
need to
join
get
the
to the
meeting
planning
yet, so,
commission.
right, so, and I have another
Yes.
matter on after this, so
Okay.
it's in my best interest to be
That's
fast. A couple of things. First of all, the separation requirement that's now in the revised zoning, that was a suggestion of your planning commission, which we adopted because we think it actually is a good suggestion. Was not in our original draft.
And we think it's good, too.
The spot zoning, we've submitted a memo, and certainly the memo outlines.
And that is publicly available. We've made it.
The issue about fees for approvals above taxes and mitigation of impacts that have been already identified, I would respectfully submit that would run afoul of the Supreme Court's recent case in the Kuntz matter and its preceding precedent.
I was afraid of that.
I'm certainly
You guys.
happy to discuss with Mr. Sachs how that would apply in this case, but I would just, obviously, I didn't want to jump in and start saying them when it was first said, but now that we've had sort of a subsequent conversation, I just want to throw that red flag down right on the
Well, as
field.
you heard, we don't need no swim team blocks, but there are
Yes,
lots of
yeah,
other
right.
things we do need.
So just remember that.
That's right.
The other issue that's been floating out there is this hypothetical of Benchmark potentially buying the rest of the church property. Putting aside all of the protections against sort of a two assisted living facilities being right next to each other, et cetera, in the zoning, you have a portfolio comparison in front of you that we submitted a couple months back regarding the modern model of assisted living, which runs to about 84 to 90 units. Benchmark has no plans. I was just talking to Bill, and certainly if the board would want it, I don't think they need it, but Bill could certainly come up here and testify the fact that they have no plans, they don't ever have any plans to purchase the church and expand. However, there are, yes, well, I'm being cut off. Literally. The hot air, right.
Yeah.
We're a little nervous.
So the, obviously, even above and beyond that, there's protections within the zoning that were placed in there that would prevent that anyway.
Do you have any statistics on the number of Methodists in these
Yeah,
units? or-
I don't, although, actually, I won't go there. 'Cause I don't, you have a lot, you have 9 months of submittals, empirical
Okay.
data, and expert opinion in
And
front of
not
you
that,
already.
right.
I don't think you need that.
Okay, thanks. I agree with you.
On that last point, expert opinion, I do want to call John back up here because I think that his report was challenged, not by any expert on challenging his conclusions, but I think also it has clouded the waters, and I really think that you need to come back up here and talk about your expert opinion. Yeah, okay.
Thank you. There's 2 points I really wanted to make. First one regarding that I had to look at 25 different developments before I found one that was, I could use. The reason I needed to look at that many is to find a development that was near, not specifically near a residential neighborhood. There were 6 or 8 or maybe 10 of them that were near residential neighborhoods. But I needed to find one that was near a large enough residential neighborhood where there's enough data to pull sale comparables. So to say that I couldn't find one next to a residential neighborhood is not true. If you look, there were several, maybe 8 or 10 or 6 or something like that. The other issue was that was raised regarding the fact that they were built together, that Atria and Benchmark were built at the same time, and that the notion that it could have potentially reduced the values. I would counter that by suggesting that when they were originally conceived by the original developer, I don't think that the developer thought that the values of 290 houses would be reduced if you put in the Atria. Very unlikely that he would have done it that way. So it just doesn't make any sense. Okay?
Thank
Also,
you.
let me just- I'm sorry, I'm beating a dead horse, but I want to make sure it's clear in the record.
Oh.
Based on your expert opinion, does the fact that the Atria was built relatively in the same time as the Belfair, does that change your conclusion that putting in the Benchmark's proposal in this neighborhood would not result in a significant adverse impact?
It would not change this conclusion.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. our plan here is to adjourn this meeting and then go into work session in...
Looks like he has
Right,
something
yeah,
to say.
Mr. Mayor, there's one other issue, but you may not want to get to it tonight because of the lateness of the hour. About a month or two ago, two of the residents of Foxwood
Oh, yes. Thank you for bringing it up.
submitted some proposed comments and some suggested changes to the draft zoning text, which the applicant had submitted. And Susan Favada and myself, on behalf of the village, looked over that, but I don't know whether we have time to really get into that
Well, can you just
tonight,
give a summary of that,
or
Susan, is that...
Sure. Just quickly, because I know we're all trying to see the light at the end of the tunnel here. A couple of the main points that were in the Foxwood proposed revisions, I think the most significant of which is there's an objection on their part of using the floating zone instead of a special permit process by the Planning Commission, and their suggestion in their revisions was to sort of add back that special permit requirement. And we do not agree with that approach. I think the memo makes the point that actually the floating zone process is more stringent than the special permit process. It creates
The memo Susan refers to is a memo
Yeah.
BFJ has written to us and we'll post it.
to be posted. We have copies here, actually, if anybody wants them. Based on New York State law, the special permit is actually is the same as a legislative finding that once an application meets the requirements of that special permit, it essentially must be approved unless there's some mitigating circumstance or a reasonable reason for denial. The contrast then with the floating zone is that the floating zone can be looked at on its merits, and as we said earlier tonight, it was spoken. Every floating zone application or every application under a floating zone must be looked at individually. It's not as of right. The Board of Trustees would be free to approve or deny it based on the merits of that actual application. So our feeling is that adding a special permit requirement on top of that would be redundant and duplicative. And in fact, the Planning Commission will have ample opportunity to review this application and any others that may come forward under a floating zone as part of the normal site plan approval.
Susan, before we get to the next point, but again, that means it would take away from what I would call the unfettered discretion of this board to either grant or not grant approval for an assisted living facility. It would basically say that if it's a special permit, if you meet criteria A, B, C, D, you must approve the assisted living facility, which is basically going to tie
Removing a
your
tripwire there
hands.
that,
Right.
Okay.
This gives you a lot more discretion. Another key point that they made, which is correct, is that the bulk and square footage requirements that have been referenced in the draft zoning text by Benchmark are different than what is currently in your code for assisted living facilities. And I think the reason that the applicant chose that is because they've made the point throughout this process, and we tend to agree, is that those bulk area and bulk requirements for assisted living, are somewhat outdated, and in particular, the parking requirement we feel is excessive. Some of the bulk requirements are just not in keeping with modern assisted living facilities, so they've chosen a different set of standards which are already in your code for multifamily within a certain zone, and it is true that can result in larger buildings with more coverage and sort of somewhat more bulk. I think everyone's aware of that. I believe so. Those aspects still are covered by height requirements, yard requirements, and impervious coverage is controlled by stormwater requirements. So I think in each application you would see probably some give and take. You've seen that with this application with the reduction in height. That they have to stay within a footprint, but the Board of Trustees is certainly free to make their opinions known and have the applicant respond to that. So the last aspect is that the Foxwoods revised proposal accurately states that there were some aspects that are currently in your code that control things like landscaping and siting of buildings and et cetera that are not in the draft zoning text. And we agree with that, and we've recommended that you add back some of those For instance, there's a requirement now that a landscaping plan must be submitted. That's a reasonable requirement. In fact, the applicant has a landscaping plan. We've recommended that buffer screening be subject to the Planning Commission's discretion, that could be added along adjacent property lines. The one change that we suggested, right now, the applicant's zoning text requires a planting buffer of 3 feet between parking areas and property lines. We say it should be 10, at least 10. And they have more than 10 as it is now, but that's a more reasonable number than 3. And a couple other things like limiting curb cuts. What you have now is reasonable and is a reasonable control for future development. Minimum distance between buildings where there are multiple buildings on the site. They're not in this case. And then a provision that utilities be underground. So these are all things that we felt were prudent to include for this voting zone because there could be the potential for other applications in the future down the line, depending on what happens with other properties. We don't think that these would affect the ability of Benchmark to meet these requirements, but they're just better long-term forward thinking. So.
Okay, great.
So there's basically, we thank Foxwood from Eileen and Marty did come up with a number of very good suggestions, and we are recommending certain changes in the draft zoning text to incorporate a number of their suggestions.
Okay, that's great. Much appreciated. And we'll again post a memo that BFJ, as collaborating with Joel, has provided on that subject. So with that, we're going to adjourn our regular meeting and we'll go into work session with our Planning Commission. That's obviously a public session. Anyone is welcome to come. I don't anticipate that we'll be receiving public comment at that point because we have a lot to deal with Planning Commission. But again, obviously, anybody's welcome to stay. So, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second? All in favor? Aye. Good evening. Thank you very much for your patience. Thanks for everybody attending. We'll now go into work session with the Planning Commission. Good night.